You're listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.
All right, we're recording.
Excellent.
All right, so I'm here with Bill Moyer, hypnotherapist.
How you doing, Gabe?
Regular hypnotherapist or hypnotherapist to the stars?
Take your pick. Whichever way you want to refer to me.
So I met Bill after I did a podcast with my sister-in-law, Andrea, and she says, "You really need to meet my neighbor. He's the most interesting person I know." And I said, "Well, tell me a little bit about him." And then she did. And I said, "You know what? He might be the most interesting person I know." And so when I got a hold of you and we talked about doing a podcast together on hypnotherapy, I had told you about timelines and time frames. And we talked about how I had a dentist appointment. I told you, I said, "Well, you know, I've got these wisdom teeth that need to get pulled out," which they did about 2 Fridays ago, so I sound a little weird. That's probably, I'm still recovering. But you had mentioned, and I told you how I had anxiety about it, and I have anxiety about a bunch of stuff, but the dentist just, it's one of those things that really kind of touches on my little fight or flight, which typically it's flight. And so
Right.
you had mentioned about coming in for a session and seeing if you could help me with the anxiety for the dentist. So initially, I ended up having anxiety about coming here. So one thing that I've mentioned to people about the podcast or coming up, and they asked about hypnotherapy, and we just talked about it a little bit. A lot of people's exposure to hypnotherapy is stuff that they see on TV, right? And they think it's the pocket watch and jumping around like a chicken or, you know, acting, like you said, voodoo, you know? And in the back of my mind, I knew that wasn't accurate. But at the same time, that's the only exposure that I'd had to it.
Right.
So do you come across, how do you handle talking people off that ledge and explaining to them exactly what you do?
Interesting question, and one that comes up very often. First of all, probably about 99% of what you see on TV and in the movies regarding hypnosis is complete hogwash. Hypnosis is an educational tool. It's a communication tool. And there are many theories about what exactly hypnosis is, and nobody really knows for sure, other than the fact that it can be very effective in helping people to tap into their sometimes previously unrecognized possibilities, their own inner strengths, in order to make changes in their lives that makes improvements, whether that is to eliminate bad habits or to strengthen good habits or to just make changes in your life experience. So maybe you're in a situation or your life has gone on a trajectory of not very satisfying. And there are ways that you can make adjustments in your perspective and in your approach to life that just makes it much more satisfying, much more appealing, and just have a generally better feel about yourself and your experiences.
Now, are there different types of hypnotherapy? As far as the process we did was, you know, I sat in the super comfortable chair. We put the headphones on, and there was a dialogue from you and sounds and relaxing sounds and music. Is there any other method that people use for doing hypnosis?
Yes. Hypnosis is basically the same regardless of the approach, but there are many different kinds of approaches. And as with any kind of treatments, there is no 100% working treatment for 100% of the people. So it comes down to establishing a rapport with the person you're working with and kind of coming up with what their issue is, and then dealing with discovering an approach that works. And there are some I'm sure you've seen some of those TV shows or like a stage show where they may use what they call a rapid induction. And sometimes those can work where they actually use sort of a shock that causes a person to kind of space out for a second. And you can take advantage of that approach and use it for a hypnotic session. That's not my approach. I don't prefer that method. I don't prefer the entertainment side of hypnosis.
Sure.
It tends to take away, I think, from how effective hypnosis can be from a therapeutic sense. Okay. And so, yeah, I guess to get back to answer your question, there are a lot of different methods that can be used in a hypnotic session. And it just kind of depends on the feel that the hypnotist gets for the person that they're working with. Once you discover what their issue is, and you find out what their language is. So in other words, I want to try to feed back your own language in a hypnosis session, because that'll be more effective than if I try to convert you to my language, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that was super interesting was when we got started, there was, I describe it as, and I don't know if it's the equipment, how it's set up, but it's the sounds in the headphone sound like they're in a distance. And so right away, you don't feel bombarded, right? You almost feel like you're down the hall listening to somebody talk, you know, and it's less invasive. It feels less, it doesn't feel as heavy as if maybe the way this sounds right now between us talking and having a conversation on this setup. And so when I started, my intention, and I'm a fool, Bill. So immediately I told myself all the way over here, we're in this 100%. We're going to give it 100% opportunity. And it's different. And when things are different and you don't understand them, there's some anxiety there. So you tend to get a little silly. I was 100% in. And so we did the rapport building in the beginning. And we talked about things I wanted to work on. I had told you how I had a pretty good imagination. And so the process, as we're going through there, I was wide awake. I was trying to relax. And in the beginning, you kind of press the relaxing, the calming, and one thing that I found that was strange to me, that kind of bothered me, was I had a hard time relaxing. And I don't think I told you this after we got done, but I was grinding my teeth during the process. I felt super tense, and I felt like muscles in my arms and my back and my sides and my legs just twitching, firing. And because I was trying to relax. And I almost felt as though my body was fighting that. Is that me being a weirdo, or does that happen?
Not at all. That's perfectly normal. In fact, when you go into anything for the first time, especially something like hypnosis that has such a perception about it, there's a little bit of apprehension and a little bit of resistance. And so you're not sure what you're going into. You don't know what it's going to be like. You're thinking things like, what am I supposed to feel like? What if I fall asleep? Am I supposed to pay attention? And so on and so on. And so it's very important to, first of all, have a good rapport with the person that you're going to work with. And if you don't feel comfortable with the hypnotist in the first place, then you're not going to be very effective. And once you get into the idea of letting go and letting the process happen, then it works very, very smoothly, very easily. But sometimes that can be a hard place to get to if you have a certain amount of resistance. So what you'll discover is the second time that we do a session, and we will, it's much easier because you're familiar with it. You know what to expect. And while you're in the chair, you can be fully aware of everything that's going on. and that's okay. Or you can completely check out and you can just drift off, kind of like when you were back in school. You remember that teacher that was just so boring.
Oh, I had a bunch of them.
Yeah. And so you heard what they were saying, and then your mind kind of wandered off somewhere. And then you heard what they were saying again, and your mind wandered off. You kind of went in and out. That's a very common experience in the hypnotic experience.
Okay.
Or you can just go completely out, and afterwards you may think, I fell asleep.
You missed it.
Yeah, and I just missed the whole thing. But it doesn't make any difference, because no matter where your conscious mind goes, your subconscious mind is always listening and is always aware. And so I can make suggestions, and then you decide subconsciously whether to accept those suggestions or not. And if I do the job that I'm supposed to do, which is to feed you back with suggestions that are in support of what you want as an outcome, then it's a slam dunk. It's a done deal.
You know, one thing that I found super interesting was I felt like, this sounds super weird, but I felt like I was on a journey and you were a guide. And like I said, I'm wide awake, but I'm trying to focus and I'm listening to what you're telling me. And the beginning of the session was a lot of convincing me to relax and be calm. Mm-hmm. And so I told you about having a good imagination, but it got weird on me because I never saw myself. I was never outside of myself, but I felt like I was first person view, elevated, and just kind of flying through space, right? And then, like I told you that day, I started seeing just flashes of several different hundreds, angry eyes staring at me. And they're just popping and flashing. And the whole time this is happening while you're trying to convince me to calm down. Or not, just suggesting to calm down.
Right.
And so I'm seeing these angry eyes staring at me. And I guess a couple of minutes must have gone by. And I see like a rose bush, right? So immediately I'm going from something that I feel is a negative something to something positive, but it's just a flash. And then I go back to the angry eyes. Mm-hmm. And as we're progressing through, and part of me wishes, I don't know how I would have been able to do it, but part of me wishes there was a way for me to have documented what I was experiencing mentally with what you were telling me, because I don't know the exact points and times that these things were happening. Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden, it was a monotone, kind of like a black and brownish, because the lamp colors. But all of a sudden, it would have been probably white, and the eyes stopped. And I forget at what point that was in. But then you talked about me, because I told you one of the things I enjoyed as a kid were bonfires, and so we ended up. You ended up putting me on a country road in an old Chevy truck. It was a spring day, sunny. It was nice and somewhat familiar with where I grew up. And then he'd mentioned something about going someplace that I enjoyed being. And it turned out to be my buddy Bo John's dad's ranch. And so there was a specific spot I loved sitting under his pergola. And I was in that spot. And then you'd mentioned about bringing in materials to make a fire. And so I'm imagining this, and it's all of a sudden it's a bunch of my friends from when I was a kid. And we're young again, and I'm literally seeing them individually walk up with firewood and matches and some gas, and everybody's happy. And then we went on to the fire portion. And that's where I started to get, I don't want to say I started crying. It was more of an eye sweat. So my eyes started sweating. And we're all sitting around at my buddy Bo John's ranch. And we're young. It's chilly outside. People have coats. I never see the fire. I just see the light of the fire on everybody's faces. And that made me super emotional. And that's when my eyes started sweating. Shortly after that, we went into the anxiety, we went into the dentist issues, and at this point, I am 100 times more relaxed than when we started. And I almost had to go through this experience of the back road, the country road, being someplace familiar, the fire, the people, and to get relaxed. And so when we I feel like you almost backtracked once we got done with the dentist experience. Mm-hmm. And we went back to the fire where I started getting water or eye sweats again. And I was telling Nina when I got done, I said, you know what was super interesting was I thought it was the fire I enjoyed, but it was the people. And so, because I never saw the fire, I just saw the light of the fire on their faces. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about that. And I was like, as I've gotten older, and in general, I think it happens for everybody. As you get older, you spend less time with those people that you were the closest with.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so it made me kind of revisit that and say, I need to reprioritize some things and go back to some of those people that I enjoy being around. Because I probably need that in my life, And is that something that's part of the hypnosis process or the session, or was that just something that I experienced?
That is an incredibly important aspect of your life, quite frankly. Everybody has a unique experience when we talk about finding a place of comfort, a place of peace, a place of tranquility. And for you, it was your bonfire on your friend's ranch. And some people find it at the beach. Some people it's a cabin in the woods or wherever it happens to be. And that's why when we are presenting the opportunity to you to have that experience, we're very vague in our description. I don't believe I ever mentioned a country road. I know I never mentioned a Chevy truck.
Yeah. I'm not even a Chevy guy.
I did specifically mention the bonfire because you told me that you enjoyed those times. So, and then gathering the people or whoever it was that you wanted. So it's incredible about how your imagination works in that you bring up things that are meaningful to you. And that's how it can change the perspective of the way that you approach life. You came away with the idea that there are some things you need to reprioritize. There are some things that were important to you once, and because of the interference, the responsibilities, the obligations of life, we have jobs, we have families, we have to cut our lawn, we have to do all of these things that interfere with our time to do the things that are meaningful, the things that bring us joy, that bring us pleasure in just plain being alive. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you give yourself the time to tap into your imagination, these memories, these images can begin to bubble up again, and they can cause you to have eye sweats.
Sure.
And they can cause you to think a little bit differently about how you want to approach life. Now, the tricky part of it is this is all occurring while you're here in my office, comfortably sitting in the chair, using your imagination, which is perfect. You imagine things in a perfect way. But when we're done, you go out the door and back into what is your normal life. So now you've got to come up with, how am I going to implement the things that are important to me back into my life in such a way that I can have a more satisfying experience? We're only here for a very short time.
Sure.
And so what are you going to do with the time that we have here? What are the things that are important enough to you to spend your time and your energy on? And those are the things that we try to help you to discover. So we don't tell you what they are, because we don't know. But you do. Somewhere inside your subconscious mind, you know what the important things are in your life. And we just help you to uncover them, to remember them, or to create them. You may have had an image a long, long time ago that you hadn't thought about in many, many years, and you never fulfilled that image into your reality because of life requirements.
Sure.
And then you rediscover that still has meaning for you. So now you start looking at ways that you can bring that back into your life, that you can experience those things. And that's basically, if we're doing the job that we should be doing, it's to help you have a better life experience.
And I will say, it was very eye-opening in the sense that I didn't even realize how much I missed certain things. Because like you said, we get busy with life and obligations, and before you know it, you go to work, you come home, you fix dinner, you clean up, you take a shower, you go to bed, and then you get ready for Tuesday. And when you do that several years go by, and you almost forget about the things that gave you joy, that kind of joy. And so it was very, during the first set of eye sweats, I was telling Nina, I said, I really had to fight not taking the headphones off, because that was my initial reaction to the way I was feeling was, I'm super vulnerable right now. I want to be done. And so I kind of pushed through that a little bit, and we got through it. But when we came back to it, and the second set of eye sweats, I appreciated that mental experience more. The first time it made me uncomfortable, but when we came back, it made me happy, because it was almost like I didn't know that I was going to come back to that point in our session. And when I did, it wasn't like the first time, because the first time it made me sad that it was a time that was here and gone. And then the second time, it was a second opportunity to enjoy it. And I really did. And I'll say this, when I left here, in relation to my dental experience, when I left here, I was a lot more calm than I had been in a long time. And that carried through several days. Even at work, I was calm. I came home, I was calm. Nina's probably the only thing that drives me crazy. But
it's her job.
That's her job. But the day of the dentist, that's when Nina would ask, how you feeling? And I remember there was a time I was sitting on the edge of the bed, and I was getting ready to leave. And I was thinking to myself, this would be the time, because basically, so people know, I had my wisdom teeth pulled out. I had broken one way in the back, or one of the wisdom teeth, of course, way in the back, on a piece of candy. So the dentist was like, well, let's pull them all out. And I'm an idiot. And I said, all right, let's do it. And so I wasn't in any pain. I just wanted to do it before I ended up being in pain. And now I am in pain. So I don't know if it worked. But so I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, and I feel fine. And I don't have any tooth pain. But I remember thinking to myself, this is the time where I would call the dentist and reschedule, because my anxiety would be very high. And so that thought process went through my head, but I didn't act on it because I wasn't worried about it. And I stayed calm. I got to the dentist's office. I was calm there too. They're very professional. Shirts Family Dental. And they took me to the back. We did some x-rays. And normally the whole process of the x-rays and getting in the chair and putting the thing around your neck, my anxiety would start building. And it never did. The only time I think that my little fear hit was they put this needle in your hand to put the anesthesia in, or whatever they do to make you loopy. And when he put it in my hand, that was for a split second. I thought to myself, I was like, holy crap, it's happening right now. And normally I'd flip out. And you can ask Nina, there's been times where if I'm super uncomfortable and we're in a restaurant and my anxiety kicks in, I'll leave. And I'm a big dude, so there's not a whole lot that can keep me from leaving. And so for a split second, I saw that, and I thought to myself, this is really happening. And ended up putting the medicine in. They were great. The process went well, and I think a lot of that had to do with the calmness that I left here with, because it sustained me. Now, I will say after Saturday or Friday night, when the anesthesia wore off, I was less calm, just because I had so much pain in my jaw and in my teeth, and it took me a while. But even at that, I still felt some at peace, and I think a lot of that was what I took from here. I think that was the experience with you, so I do appreciate that.
That was my pleasure. And I think if we had taken it to the next step, we would have done some additional work to work on the discomfort. Okay? So you probably still would have experienced just enough to know that it was uncomfortable, but not enough to make you feel like you were in excruciating pain.
Sure. And I was.
Yeah, I'm sure. And one of the other interesting things is that everything that we did together, you can do on your own. And one of the things that I thoroughly enjoy doing with all of my clients is giving them homework, which includes teaching them how to use some of these techniques so that they can have the experiences on their own. That doesn't mean that I don't want to continue to work with people. Sure. I'd be delighted to. And I do have people who come in here who don't want to do the work on their own. Yeah. They just want to sit in that comfortable chair and just zone out and let me do it all. And that's perfectly fine. That's okay.
That's borderline a day at the spot, really is, because it's so comfortable and the process is relaxing. Once you, unlike me where I feel like I fought the relaxing portion, once we got past that, it was really quite pleasant, and that's thunder. That's really loud, but it was a pleasant experience. So I can see why people would rather be here than do it on their own. You know, it's almost like maybe like going to the gym. You know, if you're going to work out at the house, you're probably not going to put as much of yourself into it as if you're at the gym. So I think learning those practices to be able to do that in my home are important, but coming here as well is like recharging your knowledge and your experiences, I guess. Yeah,
like recharging your batteries. I like to think of it as kind of a mind massage.
Yeah. It you know what? That's very interesting. I think that's how I would describe that. You know, it took me a while to get there because of the. And by nature, I don't enjoy being vulnerable, I guess, so to speak. So I think when I was feeling the tension and the grinding in my teeth and then slowly getting to where I started sweating in my eyes, that was something I was very uncomfortable with. But at the end of it, it was a wonderful experience.
Good.
It was a wonderful experience.
And I think one of the things that may have been a bit different with you was that you didn't seek me out for help. Okay? Most of the time, if somebody calls me for whatever the situation might be, it's kind of like this is the last resort. Yeah. I've tried everything. I've been to psychologists. I've been to psychiatrists. I've tried patches. I've tried nicotine gum, blah, 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 blah. And so what the heck, I might as well try hypnosis. Yeah. Whereas in your situation, I suggested it merely to try and give you the experience because we were going to do this podcast. Yes, sir. And I thought that might be an interesting perspective for you to witness.
And it was, and I think it's going to make for a better podcast too. One thing that I wanted to ask you that kind of, I guess, made me, I didn't quite understand it, but you helped explain it to me. But hypnosis can help with physical pain as well. And
yes.
You were mentioning allergies.
Yes, absolutely.
Explain that a little bit.
Well, an allergy is actually a mistake. Your body made an error in interpreting a non-dangerous substance as being a danger to your body. So your immune system is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. When it recognizes something that's a danger, it gathers all its forces and attacks it to try and eliminate it from the body. But in the case of an allergic response, it's not usually a dangerous substance to begin with. Cedar, for example, is not particularly dangerous. Irritating to your nose, make you sneeze maybe, but it's not a big deal. So if you have an allergic reaction to it, it's because your body thinks it's a danger to you for some reason. So, and not always, but very often, if a person can remember the first time they had an allergic response to a substance, there is very often a strong emotional event attached to it.
Oh.
And so we don't need to necessarily go to that point, although sometimes that can be helpful. But what we can do is we can introduce a method whereby you can experience a similar non-allergic substance and put it in the context of being just like the allergic substance. Okay. And this is kind of a short way to explain it. It's not thorough enough to be effective. But for example, if you're allergic to cedar, but you're not allergic to oak pollen, we can set up a scenario where we transfer your response to oak pollen, which is simply, it's there, it's annoying, I got to clean it off my car, but it's not particularly damaging to me.
Right.
And we can incorporate that feeling into the exposure to the cedar pollen. So you can sometimes eliminate the allergy.
Really?
And it's very effective.
Another one was the pain you'd mentioned, and that was, as we were talking, it made a lot more sense, but I was wondering the pain, I guess the thought process that happens whenever you're experiencing pain. You'd mentioned about how you don't typically want to get rid of the receptors or whatever that are telling the brain, hey, I'm experiencing pain, because that's a way of the body saying, hey, something's wrong.
Correct.
But tell me a little bit more about that, how y'all approach.
Oh, sure. Well, as you mentioned, pain is a signal, and it's good, okay, because it tells you something's wrong here, you need to pay attention, you need to take care of this problem. But when you get to a point of chronic pain, you've had all the medical attention that's needed, everything's taken care of, there's nothing else that medicine, typical Western medicine, can provide for you, then we can begin to work on it from this aspect of this is a pain that you don't need anymore. It's not giving you any messages. It's not giving you any new information. So you just don't need it. So you don't need to be aware of it any longer.
Right.
And you've probably had an experience where you had some sort of an ache or a pain from something or other, but then something else happens that distracts you, that draws your attention. And all of a sudden the pain's not there anymore because your mind is somewhere else. So we can use a similar kind of an approach.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, to allow you to just not become aware of the pain. Now, when we do that, we have to be a little bit careful. So if you were to call me and say, you know, I have these terrible headaches, can you help me get rid of them? Short answer is yes. Longer answer is, have you had a medical evaluation?
Yeah.
I don't want to reduce or eliminate a pain symptom that has not been diagnosed as a possible problem.
Gotcha.
That would be very dangerous and not helpful to you at all.
Yeah.
So I would want you to have a medical evaluation, make sure you don't have an aneurysm or a tumor or anything else like that going on. And if the medical folks say, you got nothing, here's some drugs, and I get a lot of folks tell me I don't want to take drugs anymore, then we can do some work with that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So what ended up, and we talked about this before, but I'd like for you to share it again. What got you into this field? You were in the military, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm a graduate of the Army Clinical Specialist course, which is a nursing program. And I worked for 4 years at Fort Sam with cancer patients.
Okay.
And I worked with a nurse there who used what was then called guided imagery, which is another word for hypnosis. And what I saw with these patients was...
That is a great name, because when I think about what I experienced, that's a perfect way to put it. Guided imagery. Interesting.
Yeah, very effective. Yeah. And the patients that she worked with, I saw had better treatment results. They had improved appetites, better pain control, and just a general better outlook on life. And it's the mental attitude of a patient makes a huge difference in their recovery, in their response to treatments, and in just how well they deal with their situation. And hypnosis can be very, very effective in helping with that.
So, do you know where she learned the processes that she was doing?
No idea. No
She
idea.
never shared those with you?
No, I never really got to know her very well. The only contact I had with her was when I took a patient into her clinic, and then I had to stay present while she did the work.
Oh, okay.
So I was witness to what she was doing. That was very fascinating. And so I was interested in the mind-body connection ever since that time. And it took me decades to find a hypnosis school that was accessible and affordable. And it was right here in Bernie, as a matter of fact.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Ann King's Hypnosis Center in Bernie.
Okay.
And it was an incredible program, very supportive, very broad-based. There are some instructors who tell you basically one technique, and they insist that this is what you have to use on all of your clients. And I don't subscribe to that, and neither does Ann. And it's been, I got to tell you, it's been the most rewarding thing that I've ever done.
That's wonderful. So how long have you been doing this professionally?
Exclusively, I've been doing this for 6 years. Part-time basis, I started in 2012.
Okay.
So almost 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's funny because you hear everybody say it all the time, how powerful the mind is, how, when somebody's sick, their mental state, and when it's in a good place, they recover. When it's in a bad place, they're less likely to recover or take even longer to recover. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting how hypnosis doesn't get used more than what I think it does. I don't know how often it gets used, but knowing that, and everybody says it all the time, how strong the mind is and how important it is to have your mind-body connection, that when you start thinking about it, it's of course this works.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Yeah. It's kind of like it's obvious. And there are some medical facilities that do have hypnotists that they either contract with or that are on staff to help. Usually it's with comfort and relaxation for procedures or for dealing with catastrophic illnesses and that sort of thing. But across the board, it's not really generally accepted.
Yeah.
It's kind of viewed in a similar way that chiropractics was viewed about 15 or 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so, and of course, as we mentioned earlier, what we keep seeing on TV and in movies about hypnosis doesn't really help
way
much.
Off base.
Yeah. And with some of the things that you see with stage shows that can be pretty graphic and pretty demeaning, mm-hmm. Okay? But what you have to understand about those shows is those are willing participants.
Oh, I see.
So typically, the folks who would participate in that would be the ones that we consider the life of the party.
Yeah. Or
they were voted the class clown or something like that. So they want to act up in front of a group, and the hypnotist is just helping them do what they want to do anyway.
So in your opinion, what people typically see on TV, is that part of a show, or like is the hypnotized person part of the show, or is that something where through suggestion they can act that way or be given, I guess, not necessarily direction, but tap into something like you said, they're already the class clown, and it's just putting them in that direction.
Right. I can't say that there was never a show that didn't have someone planted that just goes along with it.
Yeah.
I don't know that for a fact, but I can't say that it has not happened. But the hypnosis itself does indeed work. And so in any case, when you're using hypnosis, if I were to make suggestions to you that did not sound congruent with your values, with your morals, and with the outcome that you wanted to produce, you would just ignore them. Mm. Just the same as if I made a suggestion to you right now to do something that is against your will or your judgment.
Sure.
You just wouldn't do it. And it's no different under hypnosis. So that's why it's important for us to have that interview at the beginning when we were talking, and that's to establish rapport, of course. Do you feel comfortable working with me, and so on and so on. But it's also to find out what is the outcome that you're looking for, so that I can mold the language that I use in such a way as to be supportive of what you want to accomplish.
Gotcha.
And in many cases, I can gather the exact language, the exact words that you use, so that I can incorporate those into the hypnotic session, because those are going to be more meaningful to you than if I start spouting off words that you don't generally use.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. You had mentioned if somebody came in for pain, let's say they were having headaches, you would recommend them get checked from a doctor and run tests. Are there what else or what other type of person would you? It sounds like this hypnosis is for everyone, but what kind of other people would you maybe have them look into something else before trying hypnosis?
Generally, anybody who has a complaint that sounds like it's a medical or a mental health issue.
Okay.
So if someone called me and said, for example, I have voices telling me to do bad things.
Gotcha.
That's not somebody that I would want to see.
Okay.
Not immediately anyway. I would refer them to a psychiatrist or a psychologist.
Okay.
Any other kind of a thing that could be a medical condition. And I think probably in most cases, the medical conditions generally present in some form of pain or discomfort.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I'm having abdominal pain. You need to get that evaluated before I'd be willing to work with them.
Okay.
Okay.
So the flip side of that question would be, what types of people have you had the most success with?
I've had some really good success with smokers. I have some real good success with people who want to make life changes. Many times we get stuck with what our experiences were from our past, and especially if those experiences were unpleasant.
Yeah.
And, well, let's face it, if they weren't unpleasant, they wouldn't be looking to change them. So the only way that the past experiences live on is the way that we allow them to in our minds, our thoughts, our emotions. And so in order to release those and let them go so that you can move forward and create a better life, it takes being willing, quite frankly, to let it go. Because the fact is that what happened in the past is gone.
Yeah.
It can't be changed. It's gone. It's over with. And it doesn't have to affect you today.
Yeah.
So you can let it go. You can put it in a perspective of a memory, just like any other memory that you might have. It can begin to fade, and it can take less importance in what's happening today and in what you're going to plan for the future. Mm-hmm. And then the second part of that is accepting the current reality. What is today is. And we're not condemning it. We're not saying I should be somewhere else, or why am I not more successful, or, why did I get into this relationship? Why did I get out of this relationship? Whatever it is. You just take a look at what is real today. Don't judge it. Then you can decide, what do I want to be different by tomorrow?
Yeah. Next
week, next month, next year. And you should start working in those directions.
I think that's important, and I think that a lot of us, and including myself, we hold on to those negative past experiences, and it happens for everybody, I think, and it directs their life in a negative way, and it's almost like sailing a ship with the anchor out, mm-hmm. and it's hindering your progress, and a lot of people have a hard time. I think there's some people that aren't ready to let things like that go.
Correct.
But then there's some people that don't know how to let those things go, right. And that's where you come into play.
Yeah, and that's actually a long preparatory conversation with that person, because you hit it right on the head when you said they have to be ready, because a part of it is letting go of the experiences and also forgiving everybody that was involved.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
And, well, the third part is usually the hardest, and that's forgiving yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, because we very often think about things like, if only I had done so-and-so, or if only I had not done so-and-so. But the fact is that you're judging that younger you with your current knowledge, and you didn't know then what you know now.
Yeah.
So there's no way you could have made a different decision.
Yeah.
And so you got to let that go, and you reincorporate the energies that you have tied up in the past into your present. So again, it's like you said, if you're trying to sail with your anchor out, you're not going to get very far.
Yeah.
So we need to weigh that anchor, and we need to bring it back on board and reclaim that energy so that you can move forward.
I like how you said that, because I think a lot of times, a lot of us will, like you said, we lived a life experience several years ago without the knowledge that we have today. And we almost condemn ourselves for those actions today. Mm-hmm. And I find myself, like I told you when we did the initial interview, I do a pretty good job of taking myself out of a situation and looking at it for what it is and not being emotionally tied to it. And then I end up coming back in and get emotionally tied to it. But there's been times where I have conversations with myself. It might be a little crazy on the way home or things like that. But, and I try and tell myself I wasn't the person then that I was today, or that I am today. Right. And having that knowledge, it's one thing that when I have conversations with family or friends or whoever, and we talk about things of the past, because we're living the life that we're living, we forget that we were somebody else back then, and we don't forgive ourselves or give ourselves enough, allow ourselves to heal because of actions that we made. Because to us, it was just a handful of years ago. Mm-hmm. But it's like, but think about everything that you've learned and everything you've experienced since then. That's why you're able to look back and go, okay, that was a negative experience and I shouldn't have behaved that way. But you didn't have that knowledge back then.
Correct.
So you have to learn, and you're exactly right. The third one was the worst, learning to forgive yourself. Because a lot of people, it's so strange how we're so quick to say, we're going to forgive somebody or not going to forgive somebody. But it's so difficult to give ourselves that allow ourselves to forgive ourselves. And I don't know why. You may have some insight onto it, but why do we carry that the way we do?
Sometimes we hold ourselves to a very high standard. We think that we should be doing better. Sometimes it's a function of our upbringing. If you've had a very difficult childhood where you just couldn't do anything right, where you were chastised frequently, where you were never given a pat on the back for doing something good, then you hold yourself to that same standard. And that ends up being a vicious cycle of never being able to be good enough, no matter how good. It surprises me when I ask people to tell me about things in their life that they succeeded at, things that they did or were recognized for that made them feel proud of themselves. They have a very hard time coming up with anything.
Yeah.
And it's really surprising because during the conversation, they can tell me things that I think, wow, that's amazing. I worked with a gentleman several years ago who came to me to stop smoking. Didn't think he could do it on his own. But by his own admission, he had a very successful military career, retired, as a light colonel or a colonel or something. I don't remember exactly. Had a drinking problem that he overcame totally on his own.
Oh, wow.
Completely on his own. had a loving family, terrific relationship with his wife, successful kids, and this person didn't think he had the confidence to be able to give up smoking on his own. And that idea just blows me away. Mm-hmm. Because if you're able to do all of these other things, then obviously you can do that as well. Just that he felt like he needed the help to do it.
Yeah.
Which is okay. At least he had the foresight to look for the help.
Yeah.
Okay. But again, going back to the original content of this portion, the idea that people can tell me all sorts of things that are wrong with them, but they have a very difficult time coming up with anything that they feel happy about themselves.
You know, in your opinion, if you're going to give advice to the tens of people who might listen to this, what is something they can practice every day, or maybe an affirmation or something they can tell themselves that kind of starts pointing in that direction? Maybe they'll never turn the corner and learn to see. I had a conversation with a friend the other day. We were talking about another friend of ours, and he's been struggling with relationships and work and just aspects of his life. And like I told you the other day, for being a fat, unattractive man, I have way too much self-esteem. And so we were talking about our friend, and I told her, I said, I don't understand him. He's a good-looking guy. He's intelligent. He's got a good job. He's got a lot going for him. He's into some cool hobbies. He's fit. But his self-esteem is lacking. So what can people do? What do you think people can do to try and help them in that area of self-esteem? You know, because it's kind of like when we talked about people not changing till they're ready. It's like you can't expect people to really appreciate you if you don't appreciate yourself.
Exactly.
And my problem is I love myself way too much. I told Nina the other day I was looking for a picture on Facebook, and I was going through and I stopped and I said, I might be a narcissist. I love myself. I was like, oh, look at all these pictures of me that I've posted, but how can people help themselves in that area?
Well, in the situation that you just described, if I can take just a moment to talk about that one, mm-hmm. It sounds like he won the external game, but he's not winning the internal game.
Yeah.
So in that situation, I would want to delve into, see if we can discover where does that come from.
Yeah.
What is it that occurred in his life that led him down the path of feeling like he's not good enough for whatever reason? But for people who just generally want to feel better, there's a couple things I would recommend. First of all, find something that you enjoy doing and do it.
Yeah.
Most of the time, we allow ourselves the time that's left over.
Yeah.
After we take care of all of our obligations, we do all the things that we're supposed to do because society says so, because of our choices and so on. Mm-hmm. And so when it comes down to doing something that we enjoy, there's no time left.
Yeah.
And I get that. But the other thing I would recommend is learn how to meditate and make time for yourself to meditate every single day. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And there's more than one way to meditate. There's many, many ways to meditate. So this concept of, well, I tried to meditate, but I can't because I can't clear my mind. Well, good news. You don't have to. There are many different things that you can do. And I would recommend that people explore different methods and pick on the ones that work.
Yeah.
And just because you tried one today and it didn't work doesn't mean you can't meditate. It means that method doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
So try something else.
So I think when people think of meditate, they're thinking of yoga type stuff. Mm-hmm. But isn't that also maybe taking a few minutes for prayer or just sitting silently or something along those lines?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Prayer can be a meditation. Anything that you can involve yourself in that grasps your attention, that holds your focus to the exclusion of all the external interference that's around you, that is a form of meditation. So yoga is a form of meditation. Martial arts is a form of meditation. Assuming that you are present in whatever that you're performing, as long as you are present in that moment and you're not distracted and you're not dividing your attention with other things, that is a form of meditation.
You know, this weekend I drove down to Corpus. Actually, I drove down there twice this weekend for softball games and parties for graduation. And AC's out in the truck. And so I had the windows down. It was brutal hot. And I couldn't hear the radio, so I just turned it off. And in that 2 hours or 2.5 hours or whatever I was driving, I've done it before. I've done it 100 times driving without the radio on. But it was so calming to not have the noise and the music or the DJ talking and just listening to the wind and the road and it almost felt like meditating.
Yeah. Getting out in nature can be very, very gratifying. Can really recharge our sense of being one with this world, and can be very calming at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's funny because I laughed a little bit earlier. You're saying things to me that are mind-blowing, but at the same time, it's so obvious. And I think it's part of what you talked about earlier, where we're so distracted with the obligations of life that we forget the most simplest of things, you know? And it's, I laugh not because it's funny, but I laugh because I think to myself, of course, you know, why didn't I think of that? Why isn't that in my head all the time? You know, even you just saying, find something you like to do and do it. You know, that's silly in the sense that you should, yeah, but we don't.
Right.
We don't make time. And even the part where you said how we give ourselves the time that's left at the end of the day. And it's a sad reality. It really is. So I think if anything, it makes me think more about how I'm spending my time. You know, I will say this, when my brother Eddie died, when we talked about that earlier, that was an opportunity that gave me some clarity. And it said, oh, you're in your mid-40s. What are you doing? You know, what is priority? What is the most important thing? You put all your time. I'm a workaholic, and I grew up with a workaholic who raised workaholics. And so when that happened to me, it made me really start to restructure things, you know? And in addition to that, having the session that we had the other day also reminded me not only to make time for myself and things that I enjoy, but the people that I enjoy. And it's I have a difficult time with it because in the sense that I'm concerned, it bothers me that I've allowed myself to get so far away from the things that I love and the people I love. But at the same time, there's still time to come circle back around and come back to that fire.
Exactly.
You know?
It's never too late until the end.
Yeah.
And isn't it sad that for most of us, it takes some sort of catastrophic experience for us to restructure the way that we think, as opposed to just thinking that there's got to be more. I mean, how many people go through the 9-to-5 life, which is like you said earlier, you get up, go to work in the morning, you go home, you eat, you clean up, you go to bed. Tomorrow you get up and do the same thing. And then most of the time on weekends, we do things that make us forget what happened on the weekends.
Yeah.
And what kind of life is that? You know?
It's a sad one.
Yeah.
It's a sad one.
Exactly. And so it's no wonder that we have so much turmoil in our society these days, because people have lost track of what's truly important.
Yeah. And you know, I think also to touch on that as well is, you know, that we give ourselves, like you said, we give ourselves the time that's left over. And now it seems with social media, that time that's left over, we're not using it properly. we're screwing around the internet, or we're posting stuff on the internet, or we're arguing with somebody on the internet, or, and you have very little time, and now you're not even making good use of it.
Correct.
So.
And it's interesting you should say that, because that in and of itself is hypnosis.
Oh.
Because when you're watching a series on TV, for example, and the end of the show is a cliffhanger to make you come back next week and watch it again, mm-hmm. You're in a hypnotic state. That feeling that you've got to get on social media, you've got to see what so-and-so is doing, you've got to keep up with all of these different influencers, and what are they thinking and what are they doing? What are you thinking? Yeah. And what are you doing?
Yeah, and I think that's where people have kind of gotten away. I think as a society, we're still in decent shape. There's a few portions of it that are out of whack. But I think a lot of it is people have gotten away from what do I think, what believe, what do I feel, and they jump on this bandwagon of what they're seeing on social media or online or on TV, and they're just jumping on the ship. And right. You know what? Maybe sometimes it's better to be in your own little dinghy than on the ship with everybody else. Exactly. Yep. Well, Bill, we're pushing an hour.
All right.
So I appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about how people can get a hold of you, or your website, your phone number, where you're located,
okay.
And services you offer. That way, people listening, if they want to go through some of this experience that I went through, they can get a hold of you.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, I am a board-certified hypnotherapist, and I am a certified stress management consultant. I'm also a certified grief recovery specialist.
Okay.
And I do hypnosis and I do coaching, and life coaching primarily. And people can reach me at txhypnosis.com. My email address is wdmoyer@hotmail.com. Phone number is 210-885-1917. And I'm located north central San Antonio. Not hard to get to me. And interestingly enough, I've been doing Zoom sessions since before the pandemic.
Oh, really? So then people can do this through Zoom?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Well, Bill, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Gabe. It was my pleasure.
Yes.
My pleasure.
Thank you for the experience as well. And I'm super excited that we're friends now.
I am too. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.